Long before the red, gold, and green flew high, there was Abraham, the father of nations. In ancient scriptures, his descendants called on Jah, a sacred name for the Most High, short for Jehovah, carried on by the Israelites. Around 2000 BC, Abraham made a sacred bond with Jah, promising that his descendants would become a mighty nation, chosen and protected. Later, around 1940 BC, that same Abraham was tested, sent by Jah to offer his son Isaac at Mount Moriah, proving his faith and obedience. The Israelites would carry that covenant forward through centuries of struggle, exile, and redemption. By 1460 BC, Moses led the great exodus from Egypt, freeing the Israelites from bondage. And generations later, around 1040 BC, King David conquered Jerusalem, making it the beating heart of the Israelite people. He bought the temple site in 1010 BC, securing a holy ground that symbolized Jah's eternal promise. By 1000 BC, the reign of David had ended, but the spirit of the covenant endured. Rastafarians see their story as a continuation of that ancient journey. They believe that the black man and woman are the true descendants, the reincarnation of Israel itself. Torn from their homeland, cast into exile by the hand of the white colonial powers and suffering in the West Indies as the Israelites once suffered in Egypt. In their eyes, Rastafari is not a new religion, but a return to the oldest truths. They are not converts. They are the genuine Israelites, the children of Jah, awaiting their final redemption, not through foreign lands, but through their rightful Zion, Africa. Centuries later, on a small island called Jamaica, that same fire would burn again. The people were poor, landless, and hungry not just for food, but for meaning. Freedom fighters like Paul Bogle, who led the 1865 Morant Bay Rebellion, still haunted the hills. The names of heroes and martyrs mixed with the rhythm of African drums and Old Testament prophecy. Among the whispers of resistance, one name stood tall, Marcus Garvey. He told them to look to Africa, for when a black king is crowned, deliverance would follow. And in 1930, it happened.
Marcus Garvey at one time said we can look to Africa for a king, because the black people really was looking for some king at that time, some leader to represent them after slavery. His Majesty came along in 1930 and crowned King of Kings.
Rastafari Makanen became Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, the only African nation never colonized. Marcus Garvey's words stirred a restless fire across the Caribbean and beyond, but it was his followers who carried the torch into new lands of belief. Among them stood Leonard Howell, often called the first true Rasta man. Born in Jamaica in 1898, Howell took Garvey's prophecy, "Look to Africa, where a black king shall be crowned," and transformed it into a movement of spiritual awakening. He taught that Haile Selassie I, crowned Emperor of Ethiopia in 1930, was not just a king, but the living Messiah foretold by ancient scripture and Garvey's vision alike. In the hills of St. Catherine Parish, Howell founded Pinnacle, Jamaica's first Rasta commune. There, his followers lived communally, cultivated the land, and practiced a faith that refused to bow to Babylon. Pinnacle became a beacon, a place where the seeds of Rastafari could grow wild and free. Leonard Howell, along with other early figures like Joseph Hibbert, Archibald Dunkley, and Robert Hines, laid the foundation stones of a faith built on Africa, dignity, and resistance. The events of 1930 are no coincidence. To the followers of Garvey and later Howell, it was the prophecy fulfilled. A black king had risen, not in myth, but in flesh and blood. In Selassie's coronation, did Rastas see the living embodiment of Jah on earth? Haile Selassie himself was humble. In interviews, he often insisted he was a servant of God rather than the second coming of Jesus Christ. Still, interpretations differed, such as Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who regarded Selassie as a prophetic figure, a bridge between heaven and earth. The roots of this belief go deep into scripture. Ethiopia was no stranger to the Bible. It was the land of Cush, the realm of mighty kings and ancient lineages. Legend says Selassie's bloodline traces directly back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, binding Ethiopian royalty to divine promises. But Selassie's significance was not just spiritual, it was deeply political. He stood as a symbol of black dignity on a global stage. When Mussolini's Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, Selassie appealed to the League of Nations, exposing the hypocrisy of European colonial powers. Though Ethiopia suffered under occupation, the resistance burned bright. After World War II and Ethiopia's liberation, Selassie remembered who stood by his side. In a historic gesture, he called upon the sons and daughters of the African diaspora, those scattered by slavery and exile, to return home. To Zion, to the land of their ancestors.
Accidentally, I found myself born in Jamaica by the colonial rule. And eventually, when I came up as a youth, I learned from the prophet Honorable Marcus Garvey.
Over the decades, waves of believers from Jamaica, Trinidad, the US, the UK, and beyond made the pilgrimage to Shashamane, carrying nothing but faith, dreadlocks, and a dream of return. This movement wasn't symbolic, it was physical. A reverse exodus. Some sold all they had to answer the call. Entire families uprooted themselves from Babylon and planted roots in the Promised Land. Among the most well-known settlers was Mortimer Plano, a key elder in Rastafari and spiritual advisor to Bob Marley. Another was Razmwaya Mazimba, known globally as the Jamaican reggae artist Brother Gad, who dedicated his life to farming, teaching, and grounding the youth in Shashamane. Shashamane remains, to this day, a spiritual homeland for Rastafari. Not a myth, but a living place, where the words of Garvey, the reign of Selassie, and the longing of generations converge under African skies. From the coronation of a king, a faith began to rise, not built on cathedrals or colonies, but rooted in the hearts of everyday people. At the center of Rastafari is a simple but radical belief: Jah, the Most High, lives within each individual. Divinity isn't distant. It beats in the heart of every man, woman, and child. But to recognize Jah within, you must first reject Babylon, the system of oppression, materialism, racism, and spiritual decay that the West had built. Babylon wasn't just a place. It was a mindset, a trap that chained the soul. To be Rasta was to live outside of Babylon, to walk free. For Rastafari, Zion was the opposite of Babylon. Zion wasn't just a dream of heaven, it was Africa itself, heaven on earth, with Ethiopia shining as the motherland, the holy ground promised to the faithful. This new way of life was more than words, it was action. The Ital lifestyle called for natural living, eating food from the earth, untouched by chemicals or blood. Scripture from Leviticus warned the faithful, "Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch, they are unclean to you." Pork, processed foods, anything unnatural, these were forbidden. Dreadlocks became a crown of covenant, a living symbol of the Nazarite vow found in the Bible, a rebellion against Babylon's clean-cut order. In Leviticus 19 verse 27, Jah told his people, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard." Again, in Leviticus 21 verse 5, it is made even clearer. "They shall not make any baldness upon their head, neither shall they shave off the corner of their beard, nor make any cuttings in the flesh." These commands were not about fashion. They were sacred vows, a way of standing apart, of remaining pure in a world of corruption. The Israelites were to let their hair grow freely as a living testament of their covenant with Jah. Numbers 6-5 speaks of the Nazarite vow. "All the days of the vow of his separation there shall no razor come upon his head. Until the days be fulfilled, he shall be holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow." Orthodox Jewish traditions echo this ancient command. Among the devout, peyot, the uncut side locks, are grown in obedience to the same Levitical laws, visible markers of a life consecrated to the Most High. For Rastafari, the dreadlocks are not a hairstyle. They are a covenant made flesh, a crown of defiance against Babylon and a sacred connection back to the original Israelite faith. Every coil, every strand, is a living testimony to the journey of the soul, unbroken, unshorn, and forever reaching toward Zion. Ganja, the holy herb, was embraced not as a vice, but as a sacrament, used in prayer and meditation to connect with Jah, to reason with the spirit. To outsiders, the ritual use of ganja in Rastafari is often misunderstood. But to the faithful, it is not a drug, it is a sacrament. A holy herb gifted by the Creator. Genesis 1 verse 29 speaks, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, to you it shall be for meat." In this verse, Rastafari find divine permission. More than that, a command, to use the natural herbs of the earth for spiritual elevation. Ganja is not used recklessly. It is used in reasoning sessions, in Nyabingi chants, in solitary meditation. It is the fire that clears the mind, the smoke that carries prayers, the plant that reconnects man to Jah. Just as frankincense was burned in ancient temples, so too is ganja burned today, in reverence, in righteousness, and in resistance to Babylon's attempts to criminalize what the Most High has made sacred. Communal living, drum circles, and the humble rhythms of everyday survival. This was the soil where Rastafari grew. It wasn't about building empires. It was about building a way back to the source. From the hills of Jamaica, Rastafari sent out a call, a rhythm, a spirit, a revolution carried on the wings of music. By the 1970s, reggae had become the voice of the movement. And leading that charge was Bob Marley. Through Marley and others, Rasta imagery, lions, crowns, the red, gold, and green of Ethiopia, became symbols of resistance, not just in the Caribbean, but wherever black people struggled for dignity and freedom. In the United States, the echoes of Rasta were felt in the streets during the civil rights movement, in the poetry of the Harlem Renaissance, and later, in the United Kingdom, amidst the grit of Brixton and Birmingham, young black Britons found strength in Rasta pride, confronting racism and police brutality with dreadlocks flying and fists raised high. In Africa, Rasta communities took root, from the hills of Shashamane in Ethiopia to the townships of South Africa, living proof that the spirit had returned home. Rastafari is more than music, more than movement. It is a living flame, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, reminding the world that the fight for dignity, for truth, for Zion, is eternal. From the covenant of Abraham to the coronation of a black king, from Jamaican hills to Shashamane's soil, Rastafari is more than a religion. It's a vibration of faith, of freedom, of fierce resistance. It speaks to a people exiled and rising, reclaiming identity, land, and divine purpose. In the Ital life, the locks, the chants, and the smoke, lies a truth that echoes beyond scripture.